Hey guys, welcome back to Reviewing While Driving. I'm Gene. This is going to be part 3 of my collaborative campaign building little series. And first time we talked about the getting to know your characters, sending out a questionnaire so that you would figure out what everybody's Uber character would be that they would ever want to play in D&D. The second part was coming up with a setting that fit what all the characters wanted to do and that was collaboratively designed. And then this third part is going to be starting and running it. And that seems sort of, I don't know, intuitive. Like, well, it's just a game. Why wouldn't you start it and run it like any other game? Well, let me tell you why. First of all, the nature of it being a collaborative campaign means that you're not stopping collaborating just because you launched the campaign. In other words, it is a living campaign, and it is being continuously and continually refined and expanded by you playing in it and by the players contributing to it, even as they play. And so for that reason, the great part about this is you can start early. You absolutely do not have to have, a world map. You don't have to have a continental map or even a regional map. All you really need is enough information about each of the players and the world that they each want to adventure in. That's it. Now, if it helps you to understand it by having a map and to sort of have a starting point map so that you understand where everything is, that I found that helpful for me. And so I did do a regional map so I could place, okay, the Wood Elf character, she was from up here, and this is the dangerous sort of demon land up here. This is where the ocean is. This is where the bad guys are that I had imported from my setting that we chose. And these are the little cities where, or I should say, settlements where the players were from. And this is the main city. And then I did divide it up into sort of bite-sized chunks, which I'd mentioned earlier were provinces. The provinces were a way for me to sort of compartmentalize and subdivide the area, mainly for political purposes, so that I could say, okay, this area had previously been ruled by, Baron so-and-so, and now it was in a wilderness, or now it's under the control of Count, Jones or whatever. So the point is that I did do that as a precursor to getting started, but you don't have to do that, okay? You can absolutely start with a town or a village and the surroundings, and it all kind of depends on how expansively defined the players made their setting. So that's really the extent of what you need is the minimum amount to get started based on what they've told you. Make sense? Okay. So, and the dirty little secret there isn't just that you can start small, but that it's better to start small, because what's going to happen is, let's say that you did blow it out and you went ahead and you just went bananas and you designed everything, and these elves are from here even though there's no interaction with them yet. Or you say, this secret mage's tower is over that way. You can do that if you want, just for your own creative expression, but it's not really necessary. And in fact, I think that if your players are really embracing the organic, creative piece of this, then you're really better off doing less. Woo! How cool is that? I mean, it's less work. And so what happens is, you're going to sort of create stuff as you go and creatively, or collaboratively, I should say, come up with things that make sense or that would be cool, right? Now, I do think for the sense of verisimilitude that you do need a some sort of a backdrop or a history or a you know, you need to know kind of what happened before, right? I think you do need that just so there is some context and it's not just a complete blank slate. But that doesn't mean you have to fill in every detail, okay? So I would just say get started and play. And then it, you know, there's a lot of other material out there about how to get a group of player characters together for a new campaign, and I won't belabor that too much. The good news is that you've already said, because you've built the campaign world around them, and the players have chosen it, chances are they've already collaborated between themselves, as I mentioned the last session. They've already collaborated, and so chances are a lot of them already know each other, or at least one other of the characters. And so that in turn is going to suggest ways that they might know each other and get together and have adventures. So it can be as railroady or as open sandbox as you want. Okay. Now, in my mind, I wanted a blend of you know, sort of fixed campaign events and stuff that was going on for my edification. I enjoyed that. I wanted to have some stories going on. I wanted to have, you know, things that occurred, whether the players adventured and you know, pulled on those threads or not, right? But I was going to lay those threads out there and just see what they wanted to do. And if they didn't choose one, then that path not taken, things were going to happen on their own, kind of regardless of, you know, of what the players did. Now, I mean, they may, the outcome of those might be affected by what the players did somewhere else. But the point is that the world kept on turning no matter what the players did. And my players appreciated that. They liked the fact that the world was a living thing and that stuff was happening that they didn't know about, and that, you know, that there was an opportunity cost for making a decision, even if that decision was simply as simple as, okay, we're going to travel to this other county and we're going to investigate this ruined abbey because things were happening there. So they went off to the abbey. That ended up taking, you know, a month. Well, stuff happened during that month. That's okay. So in terms of starting the campaign, then it's okay to have, I would dangle anywhere from 2 to 10 different minor and major plot threads going on, but you don't have to. That's what I chose to do. And then I chose to have a campaign launching event that really set the tone for the setting. And last time I had told you about my 2 proposals that I had made to the players, and those proposals suggested a method by which I could introduce the players to the campaign. So let me tell you what I did. So the campaign they chose was Dunlisle, which was a medieval Scots-Irish influenced middle fantasy episodic campaign. And there's a lot of you know, sort of generic stuff there, right? I mean, I wasn't breaking a whole lot of new ground. And so, and like I had mentioned before in a different video about creativity, it isn't essential that every idea you have is creative and new and different. What's essential, though, is that you do it well, okay? And so an established fantasy trope done well is fine, and the players appreciate it. And the creativity's in the details and in the execution, not necessarily in the concept. And the creativity can also be in the combination of elements that you use from other sources or your own imagination. So for Dunlisle, I wanted to launch the campaign in a really culturally specific way. And so I decided there would be a seasonal festival in the spring that would be, you know, kind of a 3-day event, and it would be fun, and it would sort of launch the players into the campaign, introduce them to the world, introduce them to NPCs that I'd made, introduce them to each other, and give them a basis to actually be together and go forward in having adventures. So what I came up with was this Ceilidh, and that's a Scots term, I should say. That is a, it's a festival of song and dance and that sort of thing. And I gleefully stole from those sources, and I didn't even bother changing the name. I mean, it's alien enough for American audiences, and that's where I'm playing. It's alien enough to say that's, it's different and fantastical, even though I'm sure it's a very normal word to use, if you're in Scotland. But I imagine there it'd be fun to have a rodeo, right? It would be something different and exotic, but here it's no big deal. But anyway, so I chose the Ceilidh. And so there was games and dancing and music, and there was jousting, because I kind of exported some, medieval stuff there. And it was a great time. And that actually enabled the players to meet each other and get into the campaign. And it also gave me a mechanism to lay those threads for the plot seeds, that if they chose to take them. And then after that, and believe it or not, that festival took 3 sessions or so. And after that, I just said, okay, well, what plot thread do you want to pull on? And then I made them tell me what they wanted to do. And specifically, here's how I executed that. So this is so this is part collaborative and part because of the nature of how I did things and how we ran the game. So the way that this game group played was each DM would run a campaign for 2 to 3 weeks in a row, and then there'd be a rotation. So when my turn was up, I sent out a questionnaire. And I know this sounds like a beating, all these questionnaires. The players are like, stop with the questionnaires. But what happens is I sent out a questionnaire for this interlude period in between my sessions for the game I was running. And the questionnaire basically said, what do you want to do in the downtime? I estimated how much time it would be, and I wanted to know what they wanted to do. Not just downtime activities per se, although that's in there too, from the Player's Handbook and DM's Guide, the things that they wanted to do. But also just any plot things they wanted to follow up on, any NPCs they wanted to speak to, things they wanted to do together. And so that ended up seeding a lot of my content. Also, I asked them, what do you want to do next session, right? Like, what plot threads do you actually want to follow up on and pursue? Then I asked them, what did they like about the last block of sessions? The last 2, 3, 4 sessions. What did they like about it? And then, just like I said in my creativity video, I asked them, what do you wish was different about those sessions? In other words, I'm not inviting them, to be critical, because they don't want to be critical. They're having fun. They don't want to tell me that I suck. But it's perfectly easy for them to say, well, I wish that I was able to, talk to the high priestess about, this strange disease I've got, or, or something that we didn't get to, or a focus I didn't place on their character, or just, maybe the group decided to do something and this character wanted to do something else, and so I'd like to get back to that. And so I got this feedback from all the players in the interlude. That ended up then giving me a path forward so that I could decide or I could plan for the following sessions, because I'm not equipped to completely improvise homebrew content from scratch. I mean, like, as we go. I can improvise, scenes and connective tissue, the stuff, the segues that get you from one place to another. But improvising an entire homebrew campaign as you go is pretty tricky, and I'm not equipped for it. So I wanted to know what they wanted to do. So it was sandboxy in the sense of it was their decision and they have player agency, but it gave me a way to prepare for what they wanted to do that they had told me. and then there was an in-game way at the next session where they could tell me, they could sort of reconcile their different goals. So, and I did that with an NPC who is sort of their patron, not completely, but and that person was sort of the DM voice of, okay, so tell me what you're doing so that I can decide what I'm going to do. And so then the NPC was making decisions based off of what the players were doing, and asking for input about what the NPC should do. So the players had an influence not only on what they were deciding, but on what happened with some of the NPC actions. Not all, but some. Okay. Now, so I was getting input from the players in between blocks of sessions. So in my game, 2 or 3 sessions, interlude, you get the feedback, and rinse and repeat, right? And then I would have another block of sessions based on what they would tell me they wanted to do. Okay, now in between sessions, so while I'm in that block of sessions of 2, 3, or 4, in between each one, I did a recap write-up of the session. Now, if this sounds like a lot of work I'm doing with the questionnaires and the write-ups and the planning for the games and the mapping, it is, okay? I don't want to mislead you. I spent a lot of time on it. Every recap basically takes at least 2 hours to write. You're trying to remember what happened, who did what. The elements of the recap are, I went ahead and I put it on the calendar so that it was placed in time in the game world. I gave the session a name as if it was like a TV episode, right? So the episode had a name. I labeled it by episode number, like it was session 5 or whatever. I listed out which of the player characters were there, because as I run in a big group, there's a group of about 10 or 11 of us, but I would say anywhere between 8 to 10 of us are actually there every game. There's a kind of a shifting. About 6 of the players, 5 or 6 of them are there like every time, and then the rest of them come most of the time. And so that was the other reason, by the way, for an episodic campaign, was that I needed something where the players could come in and out, and it wasn't going to mess up my story because, Prince so-and-so wasn't playing today, right? Anyway, so that recap between sessions, what that did was, and I'm sorry, I didn't finish describing it. So there was the cast of characters for the players. I also listed all the important NPCs who were involved in that episode. Then I summarized it, usually in between 2 to 4 chapters of things they did. This interaction, this exploration, this important combat, things they learned, clues, story elements, things like that. And it was also a way for me to highlight things that certain players did that were noteworthy. And everybody loves reading about themselves, right? So it was a way to sort of give them a little attaboy of, hey, you really just, crushed it on that one. Good job. So, you can give inspiration in-game to players that are doing a great job. You can give them, kind of player inspiration after the game with a recap that says, hey, man, you did a great job. Good job. Okay, I also, on the recap, any notable quotes that came up, those are always fun. Campaigns are very memorable when people end up saying funny or witty or compelling things in the game. And so if there was any meaningful quotes, I put them in the session. Then I listed out the experience points that they got. Now in my game, I prefer to give group experience for combat encounters and important story resolution. And then I also give out small amounts of individualized XP for specific player conduct. For example, if they're really nailing a role-playing thing, or if they're engaging particularly well with a certain topic, or if they're if they end up sort of soloing something, like if they solve a puzzle by themselves, or if they resolve something with an NPC by themselves, or a small group of them, I'll break out XP for them. And it's not, you know, a major part of the total XP award. I would say it's probably no more than another 10 to 20% of the XP, but it does add up, and so all the players have differing amounts of experience points for that reason, plus the fact that, you know, not everybody comes to every session. So right now, for example, they're 3rd and 4th level. There's kind of a blend of levels in there, and that's fine. So that recap between sessions becomes a way to remind them of what they're doing. And so it's not just a recap for memory purposes, although that's helpful. It's also a seed going forward, and then it becomes a log or a chronology of the entire campaign. And you just got to do it, okay? Now, I have played in games where the players did it too, and I think that can be delegated. If you've got a player who's good at writing and who is objective and doesn't, you know, glorify his own character, I think that you could delegate that task to somebody else if you wanted to. For me, I choose not to. I want to kind of be the you know, the editor-in-chief of this campaign, and so I'd like to keep doing it, and I probably will. So keeping the game going through the recaps between sessions, and then the interlude questionnaire between blocks of sessions, was the way that I've been able to maintain that continuity and continue the player feedback. Okay, so the collaboration is ongoing. Now, I have taken it one further step that I haven't described yet. So after I got the interlude questionnaires, I then did an interlude recap for each player. Okay, now that is a lot of work too, but it's not all different content. Some of it is, you know, cut and pasted. And let me describe it. So there's a recap between blocks of sessions as a refresher of what happened, to place them in, you know, back in the game world after a break, and also to you know, give them sort of a launching point for that first session back, so we can decide, okay, you know, are you guys going here or going there? So for example, let's say that one of the players, this just happened, we finished an interlude and the player said we were going to have a long break, okay? It was going to be like 4 weeks of game time for various reasons. And I, as an aside, I wanted this campaign to have a feature of the passage of time. I didn't want it to where the players come back to town, you know, go to the tavern, sell their stuff, and go back out. I wanted something that was more, you know, realistic, or you know, where there was downtime, where they were doing stuff in between adventures. And fortunately, my player's marriage to another character, another NPC, kind of was a way to create that break. And you can get those breaks in other ways too, like with you know, overland travel, important events. Maybe they're waiting around for something to occur. Maybe they need to train. So you can sort of enforce downtime. And what that does is it lets the seasons pass. It lets other events in the world occur. And that's exactly why I did the interlude recap, because in the time since we started, and after 9 sessions now, about 4 months of game time have passed. So things have happened, right, in the rest of the world. It started in the spring, and now we're in the middle of the summer. And so the recap was, when I wrote it up for the interlude recap now, I wrote up what happened that was common knowledge. And this is stuff outside of what the players specifically did on their own interlude, okay, on their own downtime. This was, you know, city and world events, basically. And, you know, they knew some of the stuff, like, gosh, this noble house went and did that, or, you know, there's a exceptional bumper crop of you know, wheat this year, or the big bad brigand that's out there ravaging the countryside has been strangely quiet. You know, so there's I was able to sort of pass on news of the world, and of course drop plot threads, both new ones, and sort of update them on what might have happened for those plot threads that they chose not to pursue, that they were aware of. Okay, so again, the world keeps spinning even though they're not there. Then I also had a short to long interlude blurb for each of the specific characters, and you know, depending on the length of the interlude, those blurbs could get kind of long. I mean, that was my own, you know, creative excess, I suppose, but I wanted to do it, and the players loved it. I mean, because they told me what they wanted to do, and then I was able to show them what happened through this recap. So this method that I'm describing, what you're probably concluding, as I did, was that gaming isn't just what happens when you're sitting at the table rolling dice, right? Gaming is what happens when you're thinking about it, talking about it, writing about it, designing about it, doing your background. Right now, me blogging about it, this is gaming too. And when you can get the other players to play that game with you too, not just the table game, but the away from the table game, when you get them to play that same game with you and you're playing it together, man, it's wonderful. And I mean, I have players call me or text me just out of the blue with ideas, and it's flattering, and it's awesome. So again, I'm not trying to say that I've, you know, found the holy grail of gaming. I'm just trying to describe something that works for us, and I'm hopeful that some of you can, you know, import some of this stuff for your own purposes. So to sort of wrap up, to start the campaign and to launch the campaign, you can go small and then build it as you go, and then use those interactions between sessions and then between blocks of sessions to keep building up your content, and it'll take on a life of its own because of the players' interaction. If they've got that buy-in from having their Uber character that they made, and that was completely from their own desires and ego, that was set completely aside from what anybody else wanted to do. It's theirs, and then they made a campaign world that fit that character, and it's been cobbled together. Then they're going to want it to be good too. They're going to try. They're going to care. They're not going to show up and go, "Oh, so what happened last week again?" Or "What was your character's name again?" Or even, and this is surprising, "What was the name of that NPC we ran into?" You know, I mean, I can't tell you how many games I've played where, like, the DM knows all this stuff, but the players can't remember, you know, what the name of, you know, the princess is, or who are the bad guys, or what's the name of this creepy artifact. I mean, you'd be amazed at the recall and the retention that the players have in the game world when they're invested in it, and they've put time in it, and they've designed part of it, and they're involved with it. It's great. And so much so, actually, that I forget stuff. And they tell me, no, Gene, it's you forgot about this and this. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I mean, they as a group know more about the game than I do, and I'm the DM. Okay, so it's so that again means all I'm really doing is you know, riding this wave of content and direction of this sort of gaming vector of stories and what the characters want to do, and you know, what might be going on outside. I'm just sort of managing that flow. I'm not controlling it, you know, and that's, once you sort of embrace that and dispense with this idea that you have to be in charge of everything, or that you have to know everything. It's quite liberating, and the work that you put in is very rewarding, just as a DM. And I, on that note, and then I'll sign off. You know, I can't tell you how frustrating it can be as a DM when you make this really cool content that you yourself would love to play in, and then the players just don't do it. You know, they do something else, and so you the tendency is you want to, you know, railroad them into, you know, your content because you designed it and you think it's cool. Well, that's understandable, but it's backwards. What you want to do instead is design content that is built around what they want to do, and then make that cool. Now, they still might not interact with everything the way you want, but it's their game, right? I mean, they're the ones telling the story with you, so you have to let that go. All you're really doing is setting the stage and allowing things to progress and letting them decide what they want to do. And the cool part is, if you have a player character like I do, I get to participate too, as not just as a fly on the wall, but as an active participant. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or comments about the collaborative campaign method, drop me a note. Bye-bye.